Welcome back to Silly Reads. I want to give a shout out to everyone who is allowing me to read their encounters today, and I also want to thank the listeners for giving me a chance on this platform. To support me further, please subscribe and like my videos. Click the notification bell so that you won't miss my next upload. Thanks so much. Here we go. So, my first paranormal experience happened when I was around 5, and this was in the 80s. We lived in a house off North Avenue in Laramie in a 3-story house. The second story was basically 2 huge rooms, but the back bedroom had storage spaces on either side and a small closet. I started to play hide and seek with my friends, and I went to hide in the small closet. It had a door with no lock. I hid in there, and my friend tried to open the door. It wouldn't budge at all. I was pushing, he was pulling, but still, it wouldn't budge. He called for my mom, and in minutes, you can hear her coming to us. Then the door opened up. A week later, in the same space, I was playing upstairs and I felt something watching me. I turned around to see a small crack in the storage space with red eyes staring back at me. I ran out so fast. After that day, I refused to go back up there. Small things would still happen from time to time. We would hear footsteps, sounds of kitchen cabinets opening and closing, and when we checked, nothing. My mom always tried to pass it off until 6 months later. We were in the basement doing laundry, and there was a storage closet in the basement too. It had a bunch of old toys and a record player with no batteries. It turned on and started playing music. Then we heard something going through the boxes of stuff in the storage closet. My mom locked that door so fast and waited until my dad got home to go back down there. I was 13 at an apartment on Bernard and Lawrence Avenue. I woke up to seeing a woman in a pink dress with pearls and a hat. She said it's time to go. I was very confused, and I told my mom. So my mom's sister passed away, and I never met her before. We went to her funeral, and what do I see? My aunt had on everything I described to my mom in detail. She was shocked to say the least. I grew up in a haunted house. I think it was built in the 1900s and torn down in the 2000s. My great-grandma owned the building and lived on the second floor, where my mom's sister and I also lived. My grandma and her husband at the time lived on the first floor, and these are just going to be small encounters, nothing super scary. When I was a kid, my mom's sister and I shared a bunk bed. I got the top bunk to myself. I remember it was time for bed, and I was just laying there staring off, looking at the huge red numbers of the alarm clock on the dresser below, when all of a sudden, I heard glass break. It was so loud, it sounded like it was the window 3 steps away from our room. I woke up to the sound afraid, but my vision slowly came around, like it faded in, as if my eyes were never closed. I was in the same position staring at the clock, and several hours had passed. My heart was beating really fast, and like most kids, I just got out of bed as quietly as possible and checked it out myself. I tiptoed through the living room and looked at all of the windows, but nothing was broken, and no one else woke up. It was dead quiet, not a single snore or even house-settling sounds. I made my way to the kitchen, the place where I felt most hostility, to check the back door. I crawled my way through, past a slow corner nook that had pots and pans stored in it. The door was locked. I was afraid to go back and face the nook with the pots and pans because it felt like something was in there. I just crawled with my gaze facing the opening of the kitchen and quietly went to my room. I was so scared through that whole ordeal, I didn't even get a wink of sleep. After my great-grandmother passed away in the house, my grandma decided to buy a house, and we moved downstairs with my stepdad, who earned the title of dad before long. I noticed energy down there too, in the kitchen and unfinished back room area. I would see decomposing spirits try to enter mine and my sister's bedroom. I had sleep paralysis twice, and I saw a little girl run out of our bedroom towards the heater across from it with a grocery bag in her hand. But I also saw my great-grandmother come out of the back room area into the kitchen with a cane. She did not have a cane when she was alive, I don't think. I always felt afraid to close my eyes when I took a shower, because it always felt like someone was standing on the other side of the curtain waiting for me, and if I closed my eyes, they would try to do something to me. The back room harbored negativity at night, and I always had to close and block the door with something before I went to bed, or to wake up staring into the little open gap, seeing things moving around in there. And finally, I saw my great-grandmother when she was younger, or It could have been my great-great-grandma. I honestly can't remember. I was staring into the kitchen like I was hypnotized, and I saw a faint new scene. I didn't know it at the time, but I guess the downstairs apartment kitchen got flipped around when my grandma was a child. The sink and stove were swapped. I'm not sure how true that is, but in this faint vision, I saw a woman standing over the sink, cooking something in a pot. Her clothes were dated. I can't remember the color or design anymore, but I do know she was wearing a white apron and her hair was styled like Lucille Ball. I told my grandma about it maybe 10 years later, and that is when she told me that when she was younger, the kitchen was remodeled. I'm a 22-year-old German guy. I live in a pretty old area, so to speak, and they found Bronze Age stuff here, and even a stone burial kind of thing only 10 minutes away with bike. And the house we moved in when I was 4 was haunted. It may be a bit tame, but still terrified me and my sister. I don't know how old the house is, but had still ventilation holes in the sides to cool the house in the summer. The house is a 2-story house, where the floors were 2 apartments. A bigger property about 3,000 square meters, excluding the 3 garages, the house and the barn, all completely white on the outside. My sister told me later, she is older, that there was a pigeon with its breast and stomach cut open and intestines spilling out when my parents first looked at the house. The seller said it was one of the wildcats doing, but there were no other bites or scratches on it. We, my parents, my sister and I, on the ground floor, my grandma upstairs. I would sometimes hear heavy footsteps in the middle of the night, which was odd for 2 reasons. First, my grandma was a very small, frail woman, and second, I wouldn't normally be awakened by this kind of stuff. I am a very heavy sleeper, and you could make quite some noise before I wake up. These footsteps managed it every time to wake me up. In addition, I had this really old bunny plushie, which my parents put on the big cabinet opposite to my bed, so it would be looking at me sleeping. My parents said I liked it before, but I didn't like it anymore after we moved in. I can just barely remember that the bunny sometimes seemed to move in the night. I brushed it off until it fell down one night. My parents put it over 10 centimeters back, so even if it would have fallen over, it wouldn't have fallen down. My parents got rid of it after my absolute refusal to keep it. I also had terrible nightmares almost every night there till the incident, after which I got a dream catcher and it majorly improved. Also, always got an unpleasant feeling walking around after 10 p.m. My grandma died of a sudden heart attack on her way to the bathroom at night, and when I was up there, the bathroom and the small extra room with the hatch to the attic gave me the creeps. After my parents divorced and I got older, it got worse. The footsteps were more frequent when I was alone, and a door would suddenly swing shut, but the door was closed before and it would repeat the sound multiple times. Also sometimes felt a cold, rhythmic stream of cold air on my neck in bed. My sister later told me she heard the footsteps too. My mother always brushed it off as my imagination and I should stop bothering her. The worst experience happened when I was 16 at summer break. At this point, I got partially used to the home ghost and knew how he felt. He came a lot closer over the years, but never showed himself. And this felt so different, like, not just the extreme increase of uneasiness, but also the pure primal terror this one made me feel. I was playing games at around 2 a.m. My room door is at my right side, so it is always in my peripheral, and I always closed it. I just remember seeing the door be open in my peripheral vision, and then suddenly this dark figure with bloodshot red eyes, which looked as if he was completely insane, and a painfully big grin with completely even teeth. I panicked so hard, I fell to the side away from it. I couldn't see it anymore, but I still felt the panic. I closed the door as fast as I could, still felt it, and switched down every light and crawled in the corner of my bed, which was located in the corner. I didn't sleep that night or the next. After that, the feeling vanished, but the other one never came as close as before, and never felt the cold air in my neck again. Later, we finally moved, but to a 100-year-old farm, which is still in use, but modernized a bit. We had to tear down the old living house to build a new one. While the construction tools were going missing and electronic devices would often shortcut or stop working, I got terrible feelings there for a good year. They were angry, I guess, because we teared down the house a bit, but they calmed down a bit, and after I tried to talk to them, they now feel more like protectors than unpleasant subtenants. When I was about 11 years old, my family added to our house. This addition included an extension of the living room and an upstairs bedroom that would become mine. I moved into the room upstairs, and at first I thought it was awesome. I had my own bathroom, and the room had a window seat, and I had a TV. Basically, life was great, but I only slept up there for about a week before starting to sleep on the couch downstairs. My room would creak like there were footsteps. The handle of my door would jiggle at night, and during the day, I would see shadows move from the corner of my eye while watching TV. Of course, my parents thought it was funny and that I was just spooked. The foundation is just settling, that's why it creaks. That's just the air kicking on at night. So on, and they were right. Right? There's no reason they shouldn't be right. I was just being a little kid who was afraid of being upstairs alone. I started to go up there during the day, but I refused to go in there to sleep at night. Weird things kept happening, but I made myself ignore it. Until eventually, I decided to give him a name, Frank. Frank the Ghost. And so he has been ever since. Every time something odd would happen, I would just blame it on Frank and laugh. It made me feel better. I did this until about the age 14. I never told any of my friends at school about Frank until one day my friend Paige came over to stay the night. I was downstairs in the living room, watching the big TV and eating mac and cheese. From the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow walking down the stairs. The angle of the living room to the staircase is blocked by a wall, so you can't see the staircase itself, but you can see the shadow of someone walking down. I assumed Paige was coming downstairs from the shower and trying to scare me. "I see you," I said to the shadow on the wall. It didn't stop moving. "Paige, you're not going to scare me. I literally see you." The shadow stopped moving, turned, and went back up the stairs. When Paige came down later, I confronted her about it, but she admittedly denied it, and she still does, to this day. This is when I talked to her about Frank. Let's just say, neither of us slept in my room that night. I started to catch glimpses of his shadow more after that. Him next to my bathroom counter, near the shower, next to my dresser. And after several sightings, I decided he definitely had curly hair, because I could sometimes see it bounce when the shadow moved. Fast forward to age 15, when I have another friend named Sadie come over. She's in the bathroom when I suddenly hear her scream, and she runs into my room still pulling up her pants, yelling, "What the F was that?" I was super confused, and she kept rambling. "What the F is that thing in your shower?" And so on. I then told her about Frank. The news about Frank was around school by this point, and so everyone who came in saw him after that. I didn't take too seriously. When I was 16, things got weirder. As I would lay down to go to bed at night, I could hear footsteps beside me. I would just curl into my blanket tighter and make myself fall asleep. And this went on for a long time until it advanced even further. One night, I had been crying a lot over a boy, of course, and I laid down to go to bed. I had been lying there silently for a long time, but I wasn't quite asleep yet. Behind me, I felt a dip on the mattress. I went rigid as a rock. It lied down next to me, and I shot up out of that bed so fast. I was so freaked out. When I had first felt it, I thought I was being dumb, but when it laid down, no thank you. That never happened again after that, though, and things seemed to start happening less and less. Which brings me to my final, freakiest, most recent experience. I have very vivid dreams, but they follow no plotting and usually are very chaotic. But this night was different. I had been crying again, and I fell asleep eventually. All I could see was his curls. He had dark hair and was holding my hand, leading me down some steps. When we reached the bottom, I saw a dim concrete room with an old couch in the center. Then we were on the couch, and he was just staring at me, and we smoked a cigar together. He didn't say anything, and I can't remember his face, but I do remember his eyes. They were golden, bright gold, like if you took a sunset and placed it in an iris. Suddenly, I was on the floor, completely nude, and he was beside me, his hands wet and covered in cigar ashes. He was painting around my body. When he was done, I could see myself from above. He had painted huge black wings around me from the ashes. Then he was above me, about to do something, but he had stopped and said, "I just can't do it to you," and I woke up. I'm almost 19 now, and that happened several months ago. I don't live in that room anymore because now I'm in college, but I think about it sometimes, and I just wonder what exactly Frank is. Is he a figment of my imagination I've held on to for some reason? Is a spirit, a demon, something? Or has it always just been the house settling and my weird dreams? There are some really messed up reasons to live in a haunted house. I, being of sound mind and body, don't know any of them, but I am superstitious as hell. So when the wife and I moved to New Hampshire, right on the Vermont border, we were looking for a place to rent for a year or two before I bought a house. Now, for all the New Englanders here, my wife is a native. I'm not. She's used to New England and the vast emptiness the small area has. There are places even she won't let me travel to after a certain hour because the routes you have to take, people don't come back from. Of course, I'm not a native, so I don't know this. So when I would come home late after dark from work and tell her I took X route, she would kind of look in shock and awe at my stupidity. We found a home right on the above-mentioned border, on the Vermont side. We loved it. It was a fantastic place to live, except the basement. I could not shake the feeling of being watched and stalked like prey, so, like any reasonable adult, I just didn't go down there except during the day. So, one night, after gaming for hours in my loft office man cave, I got hungry, went downstairs, kissed the missus, and walked past my basement door towards my kitchen. I don't know if anyone reading this has gone hunting, but there is a moment you sometimes experience, especially hunting predators like coyotes, wolves, bears, etc. Sometimes they know you have them in your sight. Sometimes they look towards you, not quite at you, but it feels like they are boring into your soul saying, "You got me, make it quick." It's an eerie feeling, and sometimes you take the shot, sometimes you don't. On that night, I was walking past the door downstairs. I saw red eyes and a humanoid figure, and I froze. I stopped dead in my freaking tracks. I gave that same look of, "You got me, make it quick." After that momentary lapse of sanity, I just scooted really quick away from the door, grabbed a weapon, and called my wife, saying someone was downstairs. Call the police. There is no other entrance to the basement, and I had the door covered with my weapon from a safe position, where I could easily run from the house. Cops show up. I disarm. They clear the house. They find no person, but a set of muddy footprints that start facing towards up the stairs, that then proceed to walk into a wall in the back corner of the basement by the water heater. For some context, the wall in question also blocked off the area directly under my bedroom. It was a solid wall with a small crawl space and about maybe 4 inches of clearance on the other side of it. Cops call detectives. Detectives check it. Can't see anyone in it. They can't enter it. Photographs are taken, shoe sizes compared, my feet too big, wife's feet too small. Get a good contact number for the detective. Wife and I stay at a hotel for a couple of nights. 4 months afterwards, I would have the same happen, eventually minus the cops. It actually got relatively normal. Good old Red Eyes, in the basement, chillin' like a villain. Wife was less enthused by my antics, cheerfully just going about, and when I would spot Red Eyes, I would always give him a cheery, "Good, time of day, how you doin'?" Of which we would still have muddy footprints and I would just clean them up. So, COVID hits, lockdown happens, and we have an opportunity to move to a better house, one where we would be able to work at home better. The main reason the home was better was we had a mold issue in this house. It was in between the panes of glass in the windows. Every day, we were cleaning it up from the windowsills, door frames, hell. We had to even replace pieces of furniture multiple times, and we are very clean people. We notified the landlord over multiple months and eventually a year, and after their actions not helping at all, we decided to move. Landlord decided to get a housing inspector out there immediately after we left, and verifies there is a mold issue. I don't know if they met red eyes. However, they did find a metric ton of readings of high spore counts on the wall bordering the space between my old bedroom and the wall where the footprints always ended. So, since it was filled, the inspector scooped a little piece of earth on the other side of the wall through the crawl space. It wasn't earth as in dirt. It was approximately 7 feet of mold. The landlord then immediately contacted specialists to remove all of it and notified me to offer some kind of damage for it in the form of refunded partial rent payments. All in all, made my 2020 pretty good. Until about 3 months later, landlord calls me and offers to send me a full refund for all rent from the time I was living there, minus what she already gave. Why? There was a corpse. The medical examiner said it was the man who owned the property before my landlord. He was a lineman who, after talking to surviving family members, wore a size 8 shoe, smaller than my size 11 shoe, bigger than my wife's shoe by a mile. I don't know how you got there, but hell, bud. I hope you now found peace. Sorry for not checking it out sooner. I did, after reading about his obituary and contacting his family, swing by his final resting place to drop off flowers, place a stone, and share a good morning like I used to. Till better times, Red Eyes.